Okay. So I had certain things I wanted to say on the parsha, and then last night I heard that Rabbi Sachs had passed away, and I felt like we should say something from him on the parsha, and then Rabbi Ginsburg asked me to speak to the whole yeshiva, so I'm going to go back to my original plan, and we're going to say other things in the parsha, and then when Rabbi Ginsburg tells me to address the yeshiva about Rabbi Sachs, which I feel totally unqualified to do, then we'll do that, yeah. I know, but Rabbi Feinstein also passed away, but I'm not minimizing that. Let me clarify. Rabbi Chait knows Rabbi David Feinstein, therefore Rabbi Chait will be speaking about Rabbi David Feinstein. Two great people passed away yesterday, very different. One of them was Rabbi Chait knew personally, and therefore he will address Rabbi David Feinstein. My exposure to him is mostly, through maybe I met him once. I will try to talk to Rabbi Sachs, but in the meantime, I'll stick to what I was originally going to talk about, and maybe later in the week we'll do parsha from him. Okay. So the parsha starts off with the acquisition of Ma'arat HaMachpelah. And it's a bit of an odd story in many ways. And what I wanted to do was present some things from Rav Breuer. So Rav Breuer, Mordechai Breuer, was one of the fathers of the modern rejuvenation of Tanakh study. He taught at Gush in the Teachers College and was the teacher of many of the teachers there, and introduced mostly his methodology known as Shitat HaBchinot, which is really to read the Torah as having multiple narratives within it, which are identifying different perspectives. We can talk about his methodology at different times. But there are two parts of his analysis of the acquisition of Ma'arat HaMachpelah that I think are very important to address. I don't know if we'll get to both today. So either we can talk about the importance symbolically of the buying of Ma'arat HaMachpelah, or we can carefully analyze the actual dialogue. Those are two things I want to do in the story. Which one do you want to do today? If we get to both, great. But which one do you want to start with? Dialogue. Okay. So I think his analysis of the dialogue is really excellent. So let's and it'll help us frame the beginning of the parsha. Okay. So I want you to pay very close attention to what happens in it, and when people are talking to each other and when they're not, and what that tells you about the story. Okay, so let's read it carefully. So it starts off by Daber b'nei Chet lemor. It's Avram is speaking to b'nei Chet. And what does he tell them? Tenu li achuzat kever imachem ve'ekbera meiti milefanai vayanu b'nei Chet et Avram lemor lo b'mivchar kevarenu kvoret meitecha ish mimenu et kivro lo yichle mimcha mikvor meitecha. So Avram says, give me a hold in the land for a grave amongst you, and I'll bury my dead. And the people of Chet say to him, in the best of our graves you can bury your dead. No one among us will hold back the grave from you. Okay. Tell me whether their response addressed his question, his request. Why not? Meaning, saying yes is a good response. If I said, please give me $100, and you say, okay, right? No, that's not true. He keeps pushing them. Well, why does he keep pushing them? If they said yes, so why keep pushing them? It's more than that. It's not that they didn't give him a specific spot. What happened? Very good. Thank you. And this is why it's very important to read. Rav Breuer points out, read it very carefully. Avram says, Tunuli achuzat kever imachem. Give me a hold in the land so that I can bury there. And what do they respond? You can bury your dead in our land. We'll give you whatever you want. Wherever you want, you can bury your dead. Right? That's very different. Right? He says, that he wants to bury his dead, and therefore he wants to acquire land. They don't want to do that. So they're very magnanimous. They said, we'll give you whatever. You can bury wherever you want. We're not going to hold it back. But, and if they don't say they're going to give him land, and listen to the language. The first point that Rav Boyer picks up is exactly what Gavad picked up on, which is, he said, give me land, and they say, B'mevchar kivarenu, kvoret meitach, on the best of our graves you can bury your dead. And then the second one is this very convoluted statement, which is, Ish mimenu et kivro lo yichla mimchak mikvar meidecha. No one among us will hold back from his kever to let you bury your dead, right? It's this very, it's all negative, meaning it's ours, but we won't stop you from burying there. But his request, which would give us land, they don't say yes to. Right, so it sounds magnanimous, and maybe it is magnanimous, but they're hesitant to give Avram what he actually wants, which is land. And that's why the dialogue continues, because Avram doesn't want to settle. So what happens? He repeats, and he says, listen, okay, you're not hostile to me, because you're willing to generously let me bury my dead anywhere. So Avram, if they had just said no, so maybe he'd have to end the conversation. But it's clear they're perfectly comfortable with Avram, right? They are friendly to him. And therefore, he says, if you're willing to let me bury my dead amongst you, which means you already have a soft spot for me, we're already on good terms, so let me try this again. V'yiten li et ma'arat ha'machvelo asher b'k'tei sadeu b'chesef maleh yitnen li b'tochem v'chutz ha'kaver. Let me try. Okay, I'm not just asking for land. I want that piece of land. Okay, let me be specific, and let's see if that works. Vayan Ephron ha'chiti et Abraham, hasadeh natati lecha, v'amara asher bo lecha netatia, le'nei v'nei yamin netatia lech kfor meitecha. So now he says to them, listen, I really want land. Let me clarify. I don't want just a place to bury. I want the land where the grave is, and I want that land, and I'm willing to pay full money for it. So what does Ephron say? The sadeh is yours, the me'ara is yours, in front of everyone, I'm telling you, take it, bury your dead. So here, does he respond 100% to Avram? Well, okay, let's be careful, right? This is why it's very important to see what happens. Does he say you can have land? Yes, right? So first stage, Avram asked for land to bury, and they said you can bury. That wasn't enough for Avram. So he says, no, I want land. I want that land. I'm going to buy it. And what does Ephron say? You can have that land. Does he fully respond? What does he not respond to? The kesef maleh. Avram says, I want to buy the land, right? And Ephron says, you can have the land, right? Now, that might sound like it's really nice, except, what's the problem? Right, meaning the whole point here is that Avram doesn't want a present, right? He wants to own the land, and he wants to own the land he wants to own the land in a way that no one can deny it. So he wants to pay good money for it. And Ephron is willing to give it to him, but to let him buy it for full price, which will give him a much more secure hold in the land. Ephron's like, no, I'll give it to you. It's yours. It's okay. But you want to pay full price, right? So now Avram starts again. Vaidaber Ephron. Notati kezev kach mimeni vekberad meti shama. No, I'm giving you the money. Right? I want to give you the money and then bury my dead. Vayan Ephron Avram lemor lo. Fine. Eretz arba meot shekel kesef beini uvencha mahiv et meitcha kivor. Right now, and if you notice, each time Avram pushes them, he accepts what they've agreed to, but now he pushes. So the first time, they agreed to let him bury. So he said, you're letting me bury? Fine, but I want to buy the land. Ephron says, you can have the land. He says, okay, we already agreed to the land. What we haven't agreed to yet is that I'm going to pay you for it, and this is going to be official. And only only by this point, after each time he takes what they gave him in the last dialogue and then pushes on the point that he wants, does Ephron finally give in and sell him the field explicitly. Now, he also notes that at different points in the speech, sometimes they refer to the kever, sometimes they refer to the sadeh with the kever inside of it, which depends at each point in the conversation what is going on. So, like, when Avram is talking about the field, he focuses on the me'ara because that's what he needs. He needs a place to bury. But once they've agreed to sell, so then what's the focus? The field. Right? So once you get to the sale, you get hasadeh v'ha'me'ara asher bo. Right? He's selling the field. The me'ara happens to be in it. So from the vantage point of Dinei Mamonot, he's buying the field. From the vantage point of Avram's focus, Marat HaMachpelah is central. So when he's talking about burying, then we talk El Me'arat Sadeh HaMachpelah Al Pnei Mamrei. Right, so that's another nuance to notice in the conversation. But this is what Reb Breuer points out, is that if you follow the conversation very carefully, you realize that each time Avram gets part of what he wants, but not everything, right? They try to be magnanimous and say, you can have this, but right, they don't explicitly say you can't have that. They just say, you can have that part of what you asked for. And each time what Avram does is he picks up on that and says, thank you for that, but that's not the full thing I asked for. That's not everything I requested. Let me clarify again. Right? So the first time, again, they wanted to let him bury. He wanted to buy it. The second time he wanted to buy the field so that he would have legal, right, so that he would really have a legal standing. Ephron was willing to give it to him. And each time he said, okay, we're talking about the field, I'm going to buy it. And it seems that the whole goal of this dialogue is to explain how we get to that end point where Avram fully legally he checked all the boxes, bought it for full money. There's no claim against him. He wasn't given it as a gift that can be taken, right? He wasn't given rights that can be taken away. He wasn't given a gift where you could question the legitimacy because it was given it was given magnanimously, but not, right? It's not his investment, right? The whole goal is to get to the conclusion, which is that Avram says, I bought it, full price, everything was above board, everything was fair, so that his claim on the Sadeh v'Ma'ara Sherbo would be absolute. And I think that Reb Breuer is right, that in order to fully understand this conversation, you have to follow it carefully. What we'll do next time is, okay, so he seems obsessed with making sure that he buys this field specifically in this place in exactly the right way, which forces us to ask, why this field? Why is it so important? What does it symbolize? What's its purpose? Right? That's the other part of Reb Breuer's analysis that I think is very, very sharp, which requires, and maybe Daniel can help us, his analysis requires, but we won't do it today, so you can brush up, requires an extensive knowledge of Sefer Shmuel and of Sefer Malachim. So, Daniel, you're on. Or you can run away and not come to Parsha next time so that I can't get, what? Okay, good. Okay,